Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
So imagine a planet that is just, so completely starved of natural resources.
Right, like totally barren.
Yeah, completely desolate, ecologically barren, to the point where its only its only conceivable way to buy food or medicine or just basic survival necessities from the rest of the galaxy is the blood of its own citizens.
It is a genuinely terrifying premise to
Yeah,
start with.
it really is. I mean, they don't export microchips, they don't export grain or, I don't know, precious metals. They export the deadliest, most relentlessly disciplined mercenary soldiers the universe has ever seen.
Exactly.
And if those soldiers ever break a contract, if they ever show cowardice or compromise their reputation in any way, their entire world literally
But
starves.
it is just a breathtaking, almost horrifying way to start a story
Mm.
because it takes this very dry, very academic, economic principle of comparative advantage.
Right, the economics of it.
Yeah, the idea that you should produce only what you are absolutely best at and then trade for everything else. And it pushes that idea to a brutal biological extreme.
Oh,
It's the ultimate extrapolation of the division of labor, but applied not to factories, but to human flesh and human culture on a planetary scale.
and that is exactly the universe we are stepping into today. We are exploring a truly foundational science fiction epic, which is The Rise of Donald Graham, a Dorsai Odyssey.
Such a classic.
It really is the centerpiece of the legendary child cycle. And the source material we're looking at today traces the arc across 4 books, following one young, incredibly unusual cadet as he rises from a basic frontline mercenary to an interstellar supreme leader.
It's a massive journey.
It is. But what really grabs me isn't just the military sci-fi aspect of it, it's the macroeconomics. Like you just mentioned, the division of labor. How does a galaxy-wide economy actually function when people are the primary export?
Well, that is the absolute genius of the world building here, because we are so used to space operas being about, fighting over spice.
Right, or unobtainium.
Exactly, or hyperdrive fuel. But in this universe, the most fascinating aspect is that the interstellar economy is based almost entirely on traded labor contracts.
Right.
Yeah. It's an economy built on highly specialized, genetically and culturally conditioned human beings.
Wow.
So humanity has spread out among the stars, right?
Yeah.
But instead of every planet trying to be a self-sustaining Earth 2.0,
Like having their own farmers and scientists and everything.
exactly, with their own artists and soldiers. Instead of doing that, they've deliberately fractured.
Which the sources refer to as splendor cultures, right?
Splinter cultures, yes.
And it's not just a slight lean toward one industry, it's total, absolute devotion. To use an agricultural analogy, I was thinking about it like selective breeding.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Like how we breed tomatoes purely for shelf life until they just completely lose all their flavor. But here, they are breeding humans.
That is a perfect analogy, actually. You isolate specific traits and you cultivate them ruthlessly over generations. And the prime example, which is the cultural anchor for our protagonist, is the planet Dorsai. Because they have no natural resources, as you mentioned, they decided generations ago that their survival depended on providing a service no one else could match.
So they just went all in on the military aspect.
All in, from birth, their entire society. I mean, the education system, the social hierarchy, the family structures, even their genetics over time, it's all geared toward producing an elite military caste.
It's basically a planetary Sparta.
Exactly, a planetary Sparta, but a Sparta that operates as an interstellar gig economy workforce.
Man, that gig economy angle is wild.
It is. They aren't conquering for themselves. They are leasing out their armies to the highest bidder just to buy the carbohydrates and steel their planet literally cannot produce.
And to really understand how wild this is, the sources explicitly contrast the Dorsai with the exotic worlds.
Right, the exotics.
If Dorsai breeds the ultimate soldiers, the exotics breed the ultimate philosophers, psychologists, and what the text calls cultural pinnacles.
Yes.
I mean, the exotics don't fight at all, do they?
Not at all. They think, they guide, they create art and philosophy.
And they are completely reliant on hired muscle, which is often the Dorsai, to protect their fragile utopian societies from the more aggressive expansionist planet.
It's a very delicate, deeply intertwined web of dependencies. The exotics need the Dorsai for protection. The Dorsai need the exotics for food and technology.
Right.
And everyone relies on the massive merchant-run planets to broker these labor contracts and just keep the supply chains moving.
Which perfectly sets the stage for our protagonist, Donald Graham.
Yes, Scotland.
So Donald is a young Dorsai cadet, fresh out of the academy, stepping off-world for his very first mercenary assignment. But right out of the gate, the sources make it clear that Donald is not your standard run-of-the-mill Dorsai super soldier.
No, he is definitely not.
People look at him, and they are immediately unsettled by him. They describe him as odd. The text even drops this incredibly loaded phrase, calling him an intuitive Superman.
Which is such a massive neon sign pointing toward the deeper themes of the work.
Oh, totally.
I mean, for a rookie cadet to be labeled an intuitive Superman implies a level of perception that goes far beyond just basic military training.
Right, because the Dorsai are trained to be logical and disciplined.
Yeah.
Right. Tactically perfect.
Exactly. But Donald has something else. He has this gut instinct, this undefinable intuition that allows him to see the connections between things that other people just miss.
He's an anomaly.
He is. And in a universe built on hyper-specialized, highly predictable splinter cultures, an anomaly is a very dangerous thing.
And we don't have to wait long to see this anomaly in action, do we? Because the inciting incident of the whole epic happens almost
It
immediately.
really does.
So Donald, this fresh-faced, slightly unnerving cadet, crosses paths with a woman named Anea Marlavana. Now, Anea isn't just an exotic citizen. She is a select occultist,
Right?
which means she has been literally bred and culturally engineered to be the living embodiment of exotic cultural aspirations. She is the pinnacle of human refinement.
She is essentially a living, breathing, priceless work of art, combined with just a supreme philosophical mind. And she is currently bound by a labor contract to a man named William of Sita.
Let's talk about William of Sita, because he's not just some random boss.
No.
He is described as a merchant prince. He represents the massive monopolistic trade forces of the galaxy.
Exactly.
If the exotics are the philosophers and the Dorsai are the muscle, William is the central bank. He controls the flow of capital and contracts.
And in this universe, those labor contracts are absolute. They are the absolute bedrock of galactic law and economic stability.
So you can't just break them.
No. If you break a contract, you aren't just committing a crime, you're threatening the economic foundation of human civilization.
So here's the setup for you listening. Anea, this revered, culturally priceless figure, realizes that William of Sita is manipulative and dangerous.
Right.
She wants out of her binding contract. So she approaches Donald, who is this young, strong, morally upright Dorsai soldier, and she asks him to illegally destroy the contract and help her escape.
It is the ultimate classic science fiction trope. You've got the beautiful damsel in distress, the evil corporate overlord.
And the young knight who is supposed to swoop in, break the rules, and save the day.
Exactly. We've seen this movie 100 times. We know exactly what the hero's supposed to do.
But Donald doesn't do it.
No, he doesn't.
He flat out refuses her. And it's not just a polite decline either. He takes this incredibly valuable, culturally revered woman's contract, walks straight into the lion's den, hands the contract right back to the ruthless merchant prince William of Sita.
I know, it's crazy.
And then, just to add insult to injury, he asks William for a job in his army.
It is a stunning subversion of expectations.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck on this. I really need to unpack this choice.
Okay, let's do it.
Because on paper, this sounds like absolute career suicide, or at least the actions of a heartless robot.
Yeah.
He takes the contract from the philosopher and hands it back to the villain. Why make himself a pawn to the obvious bad guy? Is Donald just a rigid, unimaginative rule follower? Like, is he just acting exactly how a planetary Sparta programmed him to act? Just following orders, honoring contracts, ignoring human emotion?
Well, that is precisely the question the text wants the reader to grapple with. Because it looks, on the surface, like cold, programmed obedience.
Yeah, it really does.
But what's fascinating here is that it is actually a deeply strategic, chillingly calculated move. Donald refuses to play the trope of the knight saving the damsel because he actually understands the mechanics of the universe he lives in.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If he helps Anea illegally break her contract, what happens?
I mean, I guess he becomes a wanted man.
Exactly. He becomes a rogue element. He becomes a criminal who violates the fundamental economic laws of the entire galaxy. He would be hunted down, and worse, he would tarnish the reputation of the entire Dorsai planet.
Oh, right, because their survival depends on being seen as utterly reliable.
Yes. Contract abiding. He cannot save her by breaking the system from the outside.
Okay, so he protects his planet's reputation. I get that. But why go work for William? Why literally ask the bad guy for a job?
Because William is the center of power. By returning the contract, Donald proves to the most powerful merchant in the galaxy that his moral compass as defined by the laws of their society, is unbreakable.
Wow.
He proves he cannot be manipulated by beauty, by sentimentality, or by cultural reverence. And that makes him incredibly valuable to a man like William.
So it's an audition.
Essentially, yes. Donald secures a frontline seat inside the most powerful economic machine in the galaxy. He understands that you cannot dismantle a corrupt system until you have thoroughly mastered its rules and placed yourself right at its center.
That completely flips the script. It's not blind obedience at all. It's a terrifying level of pragmatism.
Absolutely.
He sacrifices the short-term emotional victory of being the hero in the moment for a long-term strategic positioning that literally no one else can even see yet.
Which perfectly illustrates that oddness,
Yeah.
that intuitive genius. He is playing a completely different game than everyone around him.
And this adherence to the rules, or weaponizing the rules, really, becomes his signature style. It brings us into the meat of his military career.
Right?
Once Donald is embedded in William of Caesar's forces, the sources note that the narrative becomes very episodic. It tracks his rapid, almost brutal rise through the ranks. He goes from force leader to veteran to aide-de-camp to staff liaison.
And what's fascinating about this section of the epic is what it chooses not to focus on.
Like what?
Well, it doesn't bog down in the gory details of individual skirmishes. It doesn't focus on Donald's physical prowess in hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, right. It's not an action movie.
Exactly. It focuses on the macro level.
Yeah.
His growing reputation, his logistical brilliance, and his ability to anticipate enemy movements in ways that seem almost supernatural to his commanders.
Okay, let's talk about that anticipation, because the sources highlight a growing unease among his superiors.
Oh, they are very unnerved by him.
Donald fights strictly by the book. He never breaks military protocol. But within those strict rules, he executes maneuvers that are so flawlessly timed, it's as if he knows exactly what the enemy commander is thinking before the enemy commander even thinks it.
Yeah.
He flanks before the enemy moves. He reinforces a line before the enemy attacks it. It's that intuitive Superman trait bleeding out onto the battlefield.
And while his tactical genius is winning battles, it's his unwavering commitment to the integrity of his profession that truly defines this phase of his career.
Which brings us to a huge moment.
Yes. This is where we hit the most critical incident of his early rise,
Mm.
the confrontation with Hugh Killian.
Okay, set the scene for us. Who is Hugh Killian, and what exactly does he do?
So Hugh Killian is a senior officer also working within William of Caesar's massive military apparatus.
Right.
He's ambitious, but he lacks Donald's strict moral framework.
Right.
Killian formulates this plot to stage fake military heroics.
Fake heroic.
Essentially, he wants to orchestrate a controlled, slightly dangerous skirmish where he can swoop in and look like a savior, boosting his own prestige and political capital.
So it's a PR stunt, a dangerous live-fire PR stunt.
Exactly.
Yep.
But the critical detail here is that this staged stunt would directly compromise the safety and the position of Anea Marlavana. Killian is willing to put her at risk just to elevate his own career.
And Donald finds out about this. Now, normally in a military hierarchy, if a junior officer discovers a senior officer plotting a scheme, you file a report. You go to the inspector general. You go up the chain of command.
Sure.
But Donald doesn't do any of that.
Not at all. Donald takes immediate, unilateral command of the situation. He completely bypasses all bureaucracy. He steps in, confronts Killian, and has him summarily executed.
Shot dead. For a PR stunt.
Yes.
I really want to push back on this because a lot of modern readers look at this moment and see a fanatic.
I mean, it is intense.
Shooting a guy for faking a battle. Killian didn't commit treason against the state. He didn't massacre a village of civilians. He was planning a self-serving protocol violation. Having him executed seems intensely, almost psychotically harsh. How is this justified within the text?
It is justified by the absolute supremacy of the mercenary code. Good to go back to the macroeconomics here.
Okay.
For the planet Dorsai, this code is not a gentleman's agreement. It's not an HR guideline. It is the literal foundation of their survival.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? It actually reminds me of the ecosystem of open source software.
Oh, wow. So?
Well, you have thousands of independent developers contributing to a massive, complex project like Linux, right?
Right.
The entire system only works because of absolute verifiable trust. If one developer secretly introduces malicious code like a backdoor or a self-serving exploit, and they aren't immediately ruthlessly excised from the community, the entire ecosystem loses trust.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The software becomes worthless, nobody will use it.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Hugh Killian introducing fake heroics is a virus in the Dorsai operating system.
Exactly.
If a Dorsai officer is seen manipulating a battle for personal glory, the rest of the galaxy will instantly assume that all Dorsai are corruptible. The trust evaporates, the contracts dry up, and the Dorsai planet starves.
Wow.
So, by executing Killian, Donald is cauterizing a wound before the infection can spread.
But there's a secondary layer to this, isn't there? It's about Ania.
Ah, yes. The brilliant duality of the act. Earlier, Donald refused to break the law to help Ania escape her contract. He seemed cold and indifferent to her plight.
Right, handing the contract back to William.
But here, when she is threatened by Killian's ambition, Donald uses the absolute letter of the law, the mercenary code, to eliminate the threat to her.
Ah.
He protects her flawlessly, but he does it without ever compromising his integrity or his legality.
It's a terrifyingly elegant solution. He weaponizes the rule book. He shows everyone, especially William of Sita, that the Dorsai do not compromise. They do not play politics on the battlefield, and their adherence to the code is absolute.
And this action catapults his reputation. He isn't just seen as a clever tactician anymore. He is viewed as an incorruptible force of nature.
Which is a big deal in that universe.
A huge deal.
Yeah.
But this brings us to a critical transition point in this story. Tactical brilliance and moral absolutism make you a legendary soldier, but you cannot conquer a galaxy from a muddy trench.
Right. Enforcing the code makes Donald a legend, but as the sources point out, tactical brilliance only wins battles, not wars. And it certainly doesn't reshape the destiny of humanity.
Exactly.
To truly change things, Donald has to step off the battlefield and into the murky, deeply compromised world of planetary politics.
Which is where his character arc takes its most ambitious leap. We watch his transition from tactician to statesman.
At this stage in the narrative, Donald has accumulated so much prestige and influence that he essentially outgrows his role within William's army, doesn't he?
He does.
He leaves William's direct command and embarks on independent operations. He starts organizing broader coalitions, fighting larger campaigns. He is no longer a cog in a merchant prince's machine. He is building his own machine.
And his titles reflect this massive shift in scale. We track his rise to the rank of war chief, which gives him command over vast multiplanetary military forces.
Right.
But eventually, he achieves a title that changes everything. Planetary Generalissimo or Protector.
Protector, that's a very loaded word. How does the text define the difference between a war chief and a protector?
Well, a war chief is ultimately still a soldier. Their horizon is the end of the campaign. Their responsibility is to their troops, their supply lines, and achieving a specific military objective.
Sure.
But a protector is a statesman. A protector is responsible for the civilian governance, the macroeconomy, the agricultural output, and the long-term societal stability of entire worlds.
It's a massive paradigm shift. It's the difference between being the star quarterback on the field to suddenly owning the team, the stadium, and the league.
Exactly.
But this is where my skepticism flares up again. How does someone who is bred entirely for combat, like a product of the Dorsai splinter culture, a guy whose instinct is to execute people who break military protocol,
Right.
how does he manage the incredibly delicate nuances of civilian governance? You don't solve an agricultural supply chain dispute with a sniper rifle. You can't execute a trade minister because the price of grain fluctuated.
And that is exactly why Donald's evolution is so threatening to the established order of the galaxy. Because he does adapt.
It does.
He does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the entire concept of the splinter cultures begins to unravel.
Oh, wow.
The galaxy relies on people staying in their specialized lanes. The Dorsai fight. The exotics philosophize. The merchants trade. But Donald is becoming a synthesis.
A synthesis. So he is absorbing the traits of the other cultures.
Exactly. He is taking the undeniable discipline, logistical mastery, and lethality of the Dorsai, and he is merging it with the macro-level philosophical leadership traits of the exotics and the strategic resource management of the merchant princes.
That's crazy.
He is becoming a generalist in a universe that has spent generations trying to engineer perfect specialists.
And a generalist who understands everyone else's specialty better than they do is terrifying.
Totally.
It makes me think about how disruptive it is in our own world when someone masters multiple disciplines, like someone who deeply understands high-level computer science, but also deeply understands human psychology and marketing.
Right. They become unstoppable.
They don't just build a better product, they completely upend the entire industry.
Because they can connect the dots that the specialists can't even see.
Yeah.
Donald is connecting the dots on a galactic scale.
But there are consequences to that.
There always are. This accumulation of massive political and military power comes with a target on his back. By becoming a protector, a statesman who synthesizes these cultures, Donald is no longer a useful tool. He is now a peer.
He becomes the primary rival to his former employer, William of Ceta.
The chessboard has widened. It's no longer about winning a battle, it's about controlling the economic and political future of humanity. You have the ultimate master of the economic system, William, facing off against the ultimate master of military and strategic synthesis, Donald.
Which leads directly into the climax of the epic. And I have to say, looking at the source material, this is where the story shifts gears so intensely, you almost get narrative whiplash.
It really does.
We go from deep political maneuvering into something completely different.
It takes a massive speculative leap, one that completely recontextualizes everything we've read up to this point.
So the Cold War between Donald and William finally boils over into open, galaxy-shaking conflict. And Donald achieves what the military analysts in this universe explicitly stated was mathematically and logistically impossible.
Right.
He orchestrates the full-scale invasion and conquest of William of Ceta's home planet.
To put the difficulty of this into perspective, imagine trying to militarily invade and occupy the central banking hub of the entire global economy.
Sounds like a nightmare.
It's not just heavily fortified with weapons, it's defended by layers of economic mutually assured destruction, private armies, and labyrinthine political alliances. To conquer Ceta is to conquer the nervous system of the galaxy.
But Donald's synthesized genius allows him to do it. He breaks the unbreakable fortress. But it's what happens after the victory that completely derails the grounded, gritty tone of the story.
Yeah, the twist.
During the capture of William, Donald learns a horrifying, deeply personal truth. He discovers that William of Ceta previously tortured and murdered Donald's own brother.
Up until this very second, Donald has been the picture of stoic, calculated, code-driven discipline. Every action, even executing Killian, was done with icy detachment.
Right.
But this revelation shatters that composure. The psychological dam breaks.
And when it breaks, it reveals the true nature of his oddness. All those moments early in his career where he perfectly anticipated enemy movements, where he seemed to know things he couldn't possibly know.
Yes.
It wasn't just hyper-competent tactical calculation. The sources reveal it finally manifests as literal sidereal abilities, psychic powers.
In a blinding, uncontrollable rage over his brother's murder, Donald reaches out with his mind. He doesn't touch William physically.
Wow.
He uses his latent telepathic and telekinetic abilities to induce excruciating, mind-shattering physical agony directly into William's nervous system.
That is intense.
And the sheer exertion of suddenly unlocking and using this massive power is so intense that Donald himself collapses into a coma.
Okay, I have to pause here. Here's where it gets really interesting, but also where it breaks my brain a little bit.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
We started this deep dive talking about a grounded gig economy military thriller. It was all about labor contracts, supply lines, and open source style codes of conduct.
Very hard sci-fi.
Right. And suddenly, in the final act, we're dealing with telekinesis and an intuitive Superman torturing a central banker with his brain. It feels like we suddenly switched from reading Tom Clancy to reading X-Men.
It's a huge shift.
Doesn't the realization of these magical, for lack of a better word, powers completely diminish his previous tactical victories? Like, were all those brilliant military maneuvers actual strategy, or was he just subconsciously mind-reading the enemy commanders the whole time?
That is a very common, very valid critique.
Yeah.
And it's a tension that exists within the text itself that's jarring.
Mm-hmm.
However, the narrative framework, the hard political science we discussed earlier, suggests that it's not a simple either-or situation.
Okay.
He wasn't just cheating via mind reading.
Then how does the world building justify it? Explain the mechanics of this evolution for me.
It goes back to the splinter cultures. The text posits that human evolution had plateaued. To break through to the next level of human potential, humanity had to fracture.
Okay, I'm following.
By isolating specific traits, like the Dorsai breeding exclusively for combat logic and physical resilience, and the exotics breeding exclusively for deep psychological insight and empathy.
They created a pressure cooker.
Exactly. They created an accelerated, speculative evolutionary pressure cooker.
So you're saying the galaxy basically forced the human genome to mutate by isolating these extremes for generations?
Yes. The specialized cultures were the crucible.
Yeah.
And Donald is the result. He is a mutation that transcends the limitations of his own culture.
Oh, wow.
His extreme tactical genius was the early subconscious manifestation of his evolved state. His brain was processing information, empathy, and logic at a level so far beyond baseline humanity that it eventually broke the physical barrier, resulting in psi powers. He is the first true post-human.
Okay. That evolutionary mechanic makes the twist feel earned within the world building, even if it is a massive genre pivot. It reframes his entire life.
It does.
But you know what fascinates me even more than the powers is what he does when he wakes up from the coma. He has William, the architect of galactic suffering, the man who brutally murdered Donald's own family, completely at his mercy.
Right.
He has the physical, political, and psychic power to crush him out of existence.
And this is where the theme of power and responsibility is crystallized. This is the moment Donald proves he has truly evolved beyond a simple soldier or a grieving brother.
Because he doesn't kill him.
No. Donald wakes up and he lifts the psychic pain from William. He stops the torture. He actively spares the life of his brother's murderer.
Which is astonishing. Most military epics end with the villain's spectacular demise. Why does he let him live?
Because of his ultimate synthesis as a statesman. Donald states that William will be needed for the future.
He spares him for economic macro stability.
Precisely. Donald recognizes that William is monstrous, but he also recognizes that William possesses an unparalleled genius for economics, logistics, and galactic organization.
So he's useful.
Exactly. If Donald kills William, the entire interstellar economy might collapse, leading to trillions of deaths from starvation and civil war. Donald prioritizes the greater good and the future survival of the species over his own incredibly justified, visceral desire for personal revenge.
It's the ultimate, chillingly logical statesman move. It proves he is no longer driven by the immediate emotional reactions of a regular human. He is looking at the board from 100 miles up.
And the result of this massive upheaval is a total restructuring of human civilization. A new galactic federation is formed, effectively ending the era of isolated, specialized splinter cultures.
The synthesis wins.
Yes. Donald is installed as its supreme leader, and Ania, the exotic cultural pinnacle whose contract started this whole journey.
Right, way back at the beginning.
She becomes his consort. They represent the ultimate, literal synthesis of human potential. Dorsai strength and exotic philosophy united.
And the sources note a very specific final image. At the very end, Donald's gaze shifts outward. He looks to the stars beyond their known, settled systems. His ambition now encompasses the entire wider universe.
It's a very powerful ending.
It signals a new beginning. Humanity is no longer fractured. They are united under a post-human leader, ready to expand into the unknown.
Within the boundaries of the narrative, it is a deeply triumphant, yet inherently chilling conclusion. The ultimate strongman has united the galaxy.
Yeah.
But stepping back from the story itself, pulling ourselves out of the child cycle, we have to ask what this text signals for us reading it in the real world today.
Exactly. We need to evaluate the legacy, the science, and the flaws of this landmark text because we are looking at this through the lens of modern readers.
Let's analyze the core science fiction elements first. The concept of mercenary armies in space.
How realistic is that?
From a historical and sociological perspective, this is highly accurate and deeply resonant. The concept of hiring professional, specialized soldiers, like private military companies, is an ancient one on Earth, and it's becoming increasingly relevant today.
Right, we see that all the time now.
Applying that to a galactic corporate setting is a very grounded, logical extrapolation of human behavior. The gig economy of war is a brilliant, enduring concept.
It actually feels more relevant now than when it was written. But then we have the psychic powers. Now, obviously, there's no hard science supporting telekinesis, but why did the author use it?
We have to look at the era. Dorsai was written in the late 1950s.
Oh, right.
During this time, particularly under the editorial influence of John W. Campbell at Astounding Science Fiction magazine, there was a massive cultural and literary fascination with parapsychology.
Ah.
It was the height of the Cold War, there were rumors of government mind control experiments, and the idea of the latent human potential unlocking psychic abilities was a very common, highly popular speculative tool.
So it was just a popular trope of the time.
Yes. It was their version of quantum physics, or AI, a frontier they didn't fully understand but loved to extrapolate about.
So it was a cultural critique and a philosophical tool of its time, rather than an attempt at hard physics. I like that framing. It makes the genre shift easier to swallow.
Exactly. It's soft sci-fi in terms of physics, but it is incredibly hard sci-fi in terms of political science, military logistics, and macroeconomics.
And despite the speculative leaps, we must acknowledge the novel's undeniable legacy.
Without a doubt.
It fundamentally shaped the military science fiction subgenre. Its episodic, career-tracking structure, following a leader's rise rank by rank, dealing with logistics and codes rather than just shooting lasers, is a brilliant narrative vehicle that has influenced everything from Halo to The Expanse.
It is the blueprint for so many stories we love today.
But looking at blueprints is a great analogy for how we should approach this book today, because the sources do highlight some significant criticisms.
Yes, the characterizations are frequently cited as wooden. The dialogue lacks the psychological realism and emotional depth we expect from modern character-driven literature.
And the portrayal of women is distinctly dated. Aeneas, despite being described as a cultural and philosophical pinnacle, spends almost the entire narrative as a passive object.
It's unfortunate, but true.
She is a prize to be won, a contract to be traded, or a damsel needing protection. Even if Donald protects her through brilliant legal loopholes rather than sword fights, her ultimate role at the end of the epic is to simply become the consort to the great man.
Which is a valid and necessary critique. It's a reflection of the gender norms of the 1950s pulp era it was born into. This raises an important question.
Right.
How do we engage with foundational texts that have these regressive elements?
Right. It's tough. To me, reading Dorsai feels exactly like looking at the early blueprints of a massive historical skyscraper.
I like that.
The foundation and the structural engineering ideas, the military tactics, the logistical realities of a gig economy planet, the political maneuvering of the merchant princes, those are brilliant. They are load-bearing ideas absolutely necessary for everything built in the genre afterward.
Exactly.
But the interior decorating, like the character dialogue, the gender roles, the pulp tropes, feels incredibly out of fashion. You wouldn't want to live in those rooms exactly as they were designed back then, but you have to respect the genius of the steel frame holding the whole thing up. We're looking at this as a historical and cultural artifact, not endorsing its every worldview.
That is a very fair, balanced assessment. It's an architectural marvel of the genre, even if you wouldn't hire its interior designer today.
Yeah.
The text's enduring value really lies in its thematic exploration of leadership and the profound dangers of hyperspecialization.
Which brings us back to why this matters to you, the listener. Why should you care about a half-century-old sci-fi book with psychic supermen and dated dialogue?
Because the core question it asks is incredibly, uncomfortably urgent today.
Yes. The book asks a fundamental question. Should a society hyper-specialize, putting all its eggs in one cultural, economic, or technological basket, or should it strive for synthesis?
The text serves as a stark warning that extreme specialization creates extreme fragility.
Wow, yes.
Think about it. The Dorsai are the most lethal humans in existence, but without someone else's war to fight, they literally starve.
Right.
The exotics are brilliant and enlightened, but without hired muscle, their utopia is easily crushed. The merchant princes are wealthy beyond measure, but they produce nothing of actual value themselves.
It's a house of cards.
Exactly. True resilience, the story argues, true evolutionary progress, only comes from the synthesis of different disciplines.
So let's trace the journey we've taken today. We started with a desolate rock of a planet exporting soldiers. We met a young, rigid, supposedly odd cadet who weaponized a strict legal code to survive.
We watched him navigate the lethal politics of a splintered galaxy, using an unbreakable moral framework not as a constraint, but as a lever to unseat a merchant empire.
And we followed his impossible evolution from a tactical genius on the battlefield to a macroeconomic statesman, and finally into a post-human leader who united humanity by prioritizing the future over his own desire for vengeance.
It is a sweeping, ambitious narrative about the absolute limits and the terrifying potential of human adaptation.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds on everything we've discussed about the Dorsai, but brings it right into your everyday life.
This is the important part.
We started this conversation by talking about our modern, globalized world. But look closer at your own career, your own education, or your own industry. We live in a world that increasingly, relentlessly rewards extreme, niche hyper-specialization.
We really do.
Whether you're in software engineering, medicine, finance, or academia, the constant pressure is to become an expert in a smaller and smaller and smaller sliver of knowledge.
Which leaves us with this provocative question. In a society that is structured to relentlessly produce highly specialized, single-purpose cogs, much like the Dorsai soldiers or the exotic philosophers, Are we actively preventing the rise of the generalists?
It's a scary thought.
Are our modern corporate and educational systems making it impossible for the synthesizers to emerge? Because, as the story of Donald Graham shows us, it is not the perfect soldier, nor the perfect philosopher who changes the universe.
No.
It is the one who can connect the dots across every discipline who is actually required to lead us into the unknown future.
Are we building a world of flawless, hyper-specialized workers, but completely forgetting how to build leaders? It's something to think about the next time someone tells you to stay in your lane and narrow your focus. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the legacy of the child cycle. Keep looking for those connections, keep questioning the structures around you, and we'll see you next time.